Section 12 of Wanderings in New South Wales, Batavia, Pedir Coast, Singapore and China, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Jennifer Beckett Wood. Wanderings in New South Wales, Batavia, Pedir Coast, Singapore and China, Volume 1 by George Bennett. Chapter 12. 3 dingoes, or native dogs, the warrigal of the Aborigines, Canis australiae dem, were seen about the hills at Gudgerigby, and the howling of the kangaroo dogs during the night was the first indication of their prowling about. They are the wolves of the colony and are perhaps unequalled for cunning. These animals breed in the holes of rocks. A litter was found near Yass Plains, which the discoverer failed to destroy, thinking to return and catch the mother also, and thus destroy the whole family. But the old lady must have been watching him, for on his returning a short time after, he found all the little dingoes had been carried away, and he was never able, although diligent search was made in the vicinity, to discover their place of removal. The cunning displayed by these animals, and the agony they can endure, without evincing the usual effects of pain, would seem almost incredible, had it not been related by those on whose testimony every dependence can be placed. The following are a few among a number of extraordinary instances. One had been beaten so severely that it was supposed all the bones were broken, and it was left for dead. After the person had walked some distance, upon accidentally looking back, his surprise was much excited by seeing Master Dingo rise, shake himself, and march into the bush, evading all pursuit. One, supposed dead, was brought into our hut for the purpose of undergoing decortication. At the commencement of the skinning process upon the face, the only perceptible movement was a slight quivering of the lips, which was regarded at the time as merely muscular irritability. The man, after skinning a very small portion, left the hut to sharpen his knife, and returning found the animal sitting up, with the flayed integument hanging over one side of the face. Another instance was that of a settler who, returning from a sporting expedition with 6 kangaroo dogs, they met a dingo, which was attacked by the dogs and worried to such a degree that, finding matters becoming serious, and that the worst of the sport came to his share, the cunning dingo pretended to be dead. Thinking he had departed the way of all dogs, they gave him a parting shake and left him. Unfortunately for the poor dingo, he was of an impatient disposition, and was consequently premature in his resurrection, for before the settler and his dogs had gone any distance, he was seen to rise and skulk away, but on account of the rough treatment he had received, at a slow pace. The dogs soon re-attacked him, when he was handled in a manner that must have eventually prevented any resuscitation taking place a second time. These instances may account for the fact why skeletons of the animals are not found in places where they have been left supposed dead. I have more than once been taken where one had been killed, as I desired to have a skeleton, but no remains of the beast were visible in the majority of instances, and crows and hawks do not devour animals, bones and all, in this country. The following anecdote proves that the dingoes, although cowards when chances are against them, will, like the Chinese, stand battle when numbers and chance of victory are on their side. A native dog attacked a calf, which was driven by a man having a kangaroo dog with him. The hound immediately set upon the dingo, but 4 more coming to the assistance of their comrade, they tore the kangaroo dog very severely, but the man, by aid of shouting and sticks, drove them away after much difficulty. On the 26th of November, I returned from Gudgerigby to Yass Plains by a longer but better road than that by which I came. Passing through a fine open forest and luxuriant pasture land, the distance being 8 or 9 miles further than by scrambling over the ranges. The Rubus australis, or Australian raspberry, cha, muth of the Yass natives, was abundant. The fruit is small, devoid of flavour, but might perhaps be improved by cultivation. It may also be an interesting experiment to ascertain how far the Exocarpus cupressiforme, or native cherry tree, may be made to produce a good edible fruit by grafting or culture. The greatest elevation I have seen this tree attain has been 30 to 40 feet, and a diameter of 1 foot to 1.5 feet. The fruit is insignificant and almost tasteless. There is another species of Exocarpus abundant about Goulburn Plains and other parts of the colony, shrubby, seldom attaining more than 5 or 6 feet elevation, bearing a white instead of a red fruit, as in the other species just mentioned. The eucalypti trees were now covered with a profusion of white blossoms, attracting multitudes of paroquets who revel in the sweets afforded by the nectaries. As the summer season was now fully set in, December, the previous silence of the woods was broken by the incipient, shrill, chirping noises which resounded over them, occasioned by the male tetigoniae, or tree hoppers, emerging from the larva into the winged state, the cases the fly had left being seen on almost every tree or post. This genus is remarkable for the instrument with which it cuts grooves in the wood for the purpose of depositing its eggs. The musical organs, or drums, only found in the males, are not less interesting, and the best published account respecting them is that by Reaumur, quoted in the very interesting work entitled Insect Miscellanies. The aborigines call these insects galang galang, and formerly used them as food. First stripping off the wings, they ate them in the raw state. That is, as the native blacks told me at Yass, when no white fella here and black fella no get bread or yam. My notice was particularly directed by the natives to the drums in the male insects as the means by which they produce their thrilling sounds, at the same time adding, in their peculiar English, "Old woman galang galang, no got, no make noise," implying that the females do not possess these musical instruments. There are several species of this genus known in Australia. During rain these insects are silent, but recommence their clamour on the reappearance of fine weather. The native blacks at Goulburn Plains told me that the manna produced by one of the eucalypti trees, E. manifera, was the excrement of this insect. This probably arose in their minds from these insects appearing on the trees in the winged state about the same time that the manna is secreted. Several gannets had lately been shot about the Murrumbidgee and Yass rivers, with plumage of a brownish-black colour, bills and legs black. There was also a bird occasionally seen in this part of the colony, bearing a close resemblance to the swift, but only seen during the months of February and March, frequenting spots where the grass was on fire to catch insects, etc. The aborigines of Yass name it creolon or creola. On the 7th of December I left Yass for the purpose of visiting the but little-known country about the Tumat River. The roads were in excellent condition at this season, and the country around resembled an extensive park. The grass was luxuriant and verdant, having not yet been parched by the summer heats, and travelling was now very agreeable. After passing Durham-Gullen, a station belonging to Mr. Barber, and Bowning Hill, or mountain, a conspicuous object from all parts of the Yass Plains, I arrived at Boogalong, a cattle station, at the distance of 13 miles from Yass, belonging to Mr. Hunt, but better known as Carroll Station, from the name of the overseer or stock-keeper in charge. I remained here a short time to refresh the horse, as at this station there was an abundance of fine grass. The roads were now good, but in the winter season, during wet weather, are almost impassable. The country in its general appearance is broken, but very picturesque, abounding in grass, but in most parts too moist for sheep, although excellent for cattle, which fatten amazingly upon these runs. The Black range of mountains was passed at the gap through which the road passes before arriving at this station. The waters, flowing from the east side of the Black Range, fall into the Yass, and those from the west into the Murrumbidgee River, and the Yass empties or unites itself with the Murrumbidgee only a short distance from this station. I was soon again on my journey, being desirous of reaching Jugiong by the evening, from which I was now distant 18 miles. Before I had proceeded many miles, some heavy clouds which had collected from the westward poured down a deluge of rain, accompanied by violent peals of thunder and vivid lightning. The electric fluid burst with such crashing sounds that I expected to see the trees shattered in 10,000 pieces by my side. Not having encumbered myself with a cloak, I was fully exposed to the pelting for nearly half an hour, when wind, rain, and accompaniments subsiding, the reappearance of the sun soon dissipated the moisture from the ground, as also from myself, and by the time I arrived at the end of my journey, my apparel was as dry as when I set out. Although this would have been in our English climate an occurrence injurious to health, yet here it is rare that any ill effects arise from it. The same remark may equally apply to the custom of sleeping in the bush at night when travelling, from which no traveller has been known to sustain injury. The road continued excellent as I proceeded, but during the wet season is probably, being similar to that before passed over, nearly impassable. The feature of the country was open forest, abounding in luxuriant grass. Occasionally a denser forest would vary the scene. The hills were thinly wooded, and the declivities carpeted with verdure. At last, the gloomy appearance and peculiar growth of the swamp oaks indicated the vicinity of a creek, which emptied itself into the Murrumbidgee River, and, on ascending the hill near it, the ripe wheat field and mud hovel appeared, and large swamp oaks, water gum, and other trees directed my attention to the situation where the Murrumbidgee River flowed. This was the station named Jugiong, the property of Henry O'Brien, Esquire, and, descending the hill, I arrived at the dirty hut of the station, my only place of rest for the night, after a journey of 36 miles. I found in this, as in other instances, more animation and beauty in the vicinity of a river than in other portions of the land, imparting cheerfulness to the traveller as well as to the whole animal creation. The numerous feathered tribe welcome him with songs and chirpings, rarely heard in the less watered and gloomy places, so much abounding in the colony. A livelier green is seen in the foliage of the trees, pasturage and flowering shrubs cast a beauty over the soil, and the journey about such places is less fatiguing, because it is more interesting and cheering. It was not long since that marked trees alone guided the traveller to these stations, whereas now a well-beaten road, passable even for gigs, has been formed, making travelling upon it very agreeable. On my arrival at this station, I found a number of the native blacks collected about, all, even the ladies, in a state of nudity, naked but not ashamed. Some were busily employed in making rude spears by sharpening the point of a long stick, which was afterwards hardened in the fire. They were preparing to hunt their evening prey. "Give them," the men at the stations observe, "ever so much bread or meat, still they will hunt opossum and other game." The spears they used were 12 or 14 feet in length. On a sunny day, when there is little wind, the water clear and comparatively tranquil, the aborigines go on the river in small bark canoes to spear fish, more particularly about the rocky parts of the river, and usually return with a large quantity. They also spear the water mole, Ornithorhynchus, if they observe any during the river excursion. Nothing comes amiss to the blacks for food. They may be said to devour every living thing that runs upon the surface of the earth or in the waters beneath. I was examining the fine muscular structure and the raised cicatrixes which were numerous over the arms and chest of one of the natives, and which he regarded as highly ornamental, when, puzzled to ascertain the meaning of my curiosity, after I had finished, he whispered to the stockkeeper if "he white feller gentleman ever see black feller before." But as for procuring an examination of their phrenological organs, it was a labour of some difficulty and even danger, for they seemed to regard it as witchcraft or some magic ceremony, and when they even did submit, they evinced much fear and preserved a very serious countenance during the operation, as if dreading the result. Similar to young ladies when under Deville's hands for the same purpose, their secretiveness and caution being overcome in some degree by curiosity. The field of wheat at this station being just ripe, a man was obliged to be almost constantly on the watch to prevent the white cockatoos from attacking and destroying it. These birds are named wagara or muren by the aborigines. They were not yet very numerous, as the harvest was earlier than usual, but last year I was told the season was later, and the crops were nearly destroyed, for they came in immense flocks, and although many were killed, it did not deter the others from attacking the grain. The reason given why they were not now so numerous was, that the young cockatoos were not sufficiently fledged to leave the nest. So the reaper's song might be, "Fly not yet, little cockies," for the old birds, rearing their progeny in a way to provide themselves with the necessaries of life, bring them in multitudes to attack a field of corn or grain, and are then so bold as to be with great difficulty frightened away, although the deaths of hundreds may be the consequence. But fortunately for the settler, the harvest was this season in a more forward state, and the little cockies not being in full feather, there was comparatively but few marauders. The way the mob of these screaming and destructive birds attack a field of grain, or the cobs of corn in a maize field, is to fly against, bear down the stalks with their weight, perch upon the fallen ears, and speedily destroy them. Like all the parrot tribe, they construct no nest, but lay their eggs in a hollow branch or spout of a tree, clearing it of the rotten wood within, except a small quantity at the bottom on which the eggs are laid, and the young ones afterwards repose. It was related to me that formerly such multitudes of parrots would beset a field of grain as to oblige a settler to employ a number of men expressly to drive them away, and even then it was done with difficulty. This is now rare, which circumstance is not attributed to any depopulation of the Polly tribe, but from cultivation having become more extended, the parrot population being now divided in flocks about the different fields, when formerly they made their formidable attacks upon one or two only, and then in such numbers that, left undisturbed for only a few hours, it would suffice to destroy the hopes of the settler, at all events for that season. It was computed that 30 or 40,000 of these birds were about the field at one time, and from what I saw, I do not consider the numbers were exaggerated. It is not only ripe grain that suffers from them, but, when it commences to vegetate, they assemble in immense flocks to root up and devour it. The lories are said to migrate from the Yass country in the summer, returning in the winter season, whether for food or from what cause I could not ascertain. Near this station, Jugiong, the Murrumbidgee River takes a peculiar winding course so as to form an extensive piece of excellent grazing land, almost into an island. By standing on the hill, marked A in the following diagram, the river is seen flowing on each side after having made an extensive circuit. End of section 12.